Welcome. Man, that leg is bad. Well, today we have a special guest, Rob Geronimo.
How's it going? Thanks for having me. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Right. It's fine.
Yeah, I think I'm the only one with the problems here.
Okay, just checking.
Well, I'm on a phone, so I might have problems. I don't know.
Well, Rob, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I am the creator, illustrator, writer of a little comic series over at Alterna called Blood Realm. It's a dark fantasy horror series. And I currently have an Indiegogo up for a retro slasher graphic novel called Wirehead.
Ooh.
Yeah, which Ben had did an awesome illustration. It's now in the fan art booklet.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah, man.
Awesome.
They look fantastic.
Oh, thanks, man. No, it's a really cool looking character. It was fun to draw.
Thanks, dude. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
I'll have to get the link. Check that out. I'm a slasher nut anyway.
Oh,
So-
awesome! Yeah,
Yeah.
If you love slashers, I feel like you would definitely dig it. It's got like a sci-fi vibe as well because he's essentially a killer cybernetic being that hunts and stalks these unsuspecting teens in the Pocono Mountains. And,
Cool.
Yeah, and there's like a cool Frankenstein theme to it because we find out, and this isn't a spoiler. It's one thing that Peter taught me over at Alterna is that just tell people everything to make them want to get it.
Right.
So I'm like, okay. So the creator of Wirehead is a World War II. He's a Japanese scientist, and he's given immunity to work and continue his research here in the United States. And he creates this cybernetic, almost like terrifying Frankenstein creature. And it gets loose in the 90s. And I won't spoil that, how it gets loose. But then, of course, the slasherness begins. The body count begins.
Very cool. Yeah. No, we've talked on the show a lot. The last book that last published comic that I had was very heavily influenced by slasher type stuff, and I'm a horror junkie. From my parents unfortunately raised me on a diet of bad stuff, like Friday the 13th and Halloween and stuff like that. So
yep.
I always turned out just
exactly. See, that's the thing. Perfectly fine.
Yeah, and those pages are looking great. Michael's doing a good job.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, he's crushing it. This one I'm writing, and I'm having a friend of mine and former student. He's doing the illustrations for it, and he just keeps teasing me with a new page, and I'm just like, I can't wait for the readers to get it.
Very cool. Rob, and I know you've been at least talked a little bit or connected a little bit because that's how we wound up with you on the show. I admit I wasn't very familiar with you until Ben said you're going to be on the show. So, I guess first, how long you been? How'd you get into comics? What made you want to make comics?
Well, first it was a comic book. It was a Superman issue that if we're going way back to like when I was a kid.
Sure.
Back when comic books were in grocery stores, and I think my mother bought it for me just to shut me up, maybe while she was shopping.
Sounds familiar, guys.
Right.
This is pretty much right now. You've laid this exact same groundwork that we all experienced. So
Okay.
Yeah. We all just talked about this like a week or two ago.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah.
But it was grocery stores.
Yep.
Yeah. No, 100%. All right. So carry on.
Yeah, so she got me. She was a big Superman nut, believe it or not. My father wasn't really into comics, and she was a collector of comics, mostly of just Superman. She adored Superman, and she got me my first Superman comic while she was shopping, and I was just hooked because this was like moving pictures. I was so used to like children's books, which were very static and still, But here, like everything was movement. Superman was punching Doomsday at the exact moment that it was happening, not before or after. It was almost like watching a movie in pictures. That's how it felt when I was little, and I was like, I want to make this kind of stuff. I just loved it, and so then. after that, I would start to explore different series and stuff like that. Of course, I loved the X-Men was really cool, Batman. But as I got older, I would always lean when my mom started taking me to the comic book shop. I'd be like tugging her arm to go into like, what's this Hellblazer? What's this John Constantine guy? Like, I'm interested in this. Hellraiser comics too. They make comics of that Pinhead. So she wouldn't let me get that. So later on, high school is when I was finally permitted, kind of, because now it was my money to go.
Right.
To go pick up those comics, and I loved it. And then eventually it led to an internship at Marvel Comics, which was a really good education because I realized I never want to work there.
Yeah.
It was just extremely corporate, and I get it. What I thought when I was younger, I how would I know? I was never there, but it's the artists are not there in the offices, the writers are not there. So really, it's just the bullpen, the production stuff, and the editors, and it was just not the atmosphere for me because I wanted to be a creator. So eventually, that led to just trying to find out different projects, finding my voice artistically, and then just landing something right with the horror stuff, which is something I fell in love with when I was young. Just going back to that.
So what did you do at Marvel when you were an intern?
I worked in the production department, and I was actually there in 2000. It was like a year and a half, and I was there for the screening of Iron Man. So that was like a huge deal.
That's awesome.
And I couldn't believe they were letting us go because I thought I thought the interns weren't going to get a chance to go. And they were like, all right, so how many tickets do you think you would need? We were able to bring friends. And I was just,
cool.
Oh, it was my show-off moment. It was like, hey, who wants to get the Iron Man in the city? I still have the tickets. And then Hulk came out, I think, a year later, and I was still there.
Yeah.
So it was, again, it was a really good educational experience, but I realized that this is not the area in comics that I would want to work in and devote all my time to.
Right. So what about art school? Did you go to art school?
So I went to a really terrible non-art school for my bachelor's. Incredible art history department because I ended up majoring in art history and loving all of the different artists throughout different times. But it wasn't until I went to FIT, it's the Fashion Institute of Technology, where they had an illustration department there, and they really helped me hone my voice. And that's actually where I started to develop the beginnings of Blood Realm, which would end up getting picked up by Alterna.
Pretty cool.
So yeah,
very cool. So was Blood Realm, was that your first comic project that you worked on?
I used to do children's books, believe it or not.
Okay.
So I did children's books first because, excuse me, sorry, this phone here. 1 second. Let me turn that off. Okay. So yeah, the children's books was a passion of mine as well, and I really wanted to kind of like get back into that, that stuff in the beginning. But then I realized, but when I'm warming up and sketching, I'm warming up to horror. So I was like, if this is what I'm doing on my free time in my sketchbook, then that means that's something I should be doing for my work. So that's what ended up happening.
Okay.
Very cool.
I actually this morning I read Blood Realm 1, 2, and 3.
Awesome.
I purchased them off of Alterna's online store a couple days ago and read them in preparation for this. I like the feel of the story, the narration from Meek, and the way you laid the pages out. In a lot of ways, it feels like. I mean, I realized that the way you wrote it wasn't poetry, but it feels like an epic poem unraveling, and it was a very cool effect. And I'll tell you the biggest ooh moment for me was in issue 2 when we first see Borg. Like that I was like, oh, that's badass.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, Clash of the Titans and all that stuff. Ray Harryhausen. That's the stuff I grew up on as well, aside from the slasher stuff. So, I wanted to make a comic that kind of like captured that, that epic mythological feel, but with a horror twist to it.
And that comes across in the story. The it feels very, very epic. The world, the locations, the fact that there's things that are going on around the story that aren't addressed in the story, like
Right.
Earth of Leviathan that is a thing at the beginning, but isn't like, oh, this is what we're resolving in issue 3. Everything just feels huge in a good way. Good way.
Thank you. Yeah. So originally it was supposed to be 3 volumes, and then I guess Peter somehow just keeps convincing me to make it 6. So now it's 6 volumes, but I'm working on volume 4 now. So then there'll be 2 more left.
Cool.
That's it. I told him that's it. I need a break.
Sometimes it is good to know where your stopping point on the story is.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So who are some of your artistic influences? You have a very distinct style.
I think it comes from also, because I told you I studied art history, and I think my love of prints and woodblock prints and stuff like that. I love that kind of look. And I also wanted the book itself to feel like an ancient manuscript with the way it was illustrated. And I really loved Junji Ito, the horror manga artist. I love the way his texture with line. I didn't know line could terrify me until I saw his work, and I was like, oh my God, line can do that? Damn. I love Mobius, a lot of European comic guys. And then one of my biggest was Frank Miller with Sin City 300, mainly because I was always drawn to artists and creators who were the creator of who did everything, basically. They did the writing, the art, sometimes the lettering, but mainly it was their story and their art. And I was always drawn to stuff, to creators like that. And what I loved about Frank's stuff was that it wasn't mainstream. It was his art. You know what I mean? Like if you looked at Frank's stuff, you would say, "Oh, that's Frank Miller." It doesn't have to look like Jim Lee. So that was really motivating and inspiring to me, that I didn't have to draw like Jim Lee or John Romita Jr. and all those guys to get work, because I didn't. Finally, I saw an artist who was like, "Oh, I kind of draw similar to this naturally," and I see Frank does too. This guy Frank Miller. So I was like, you know what? That's really, like I said, inspiring, and I would kind of just absorb all of his stuff and his use of light and dark. I was heavily influenced. And then the last one is Sergio Tappi, who is a comic book illustrator in Italy. He's my all-time favorite comic book illustrator. He's absolutely incredible. He designs the whole page, and that's the thing, like the way you say I lay out the pages. He's not just doing individual panels, like it's designing the entire page, imagining how all the panels work as one solid image, and he really opened my mind to that.
There was the page layout was captivating from the beginning, going into Blood Realm, and like everything. I totally get it now, because I couldn't put my finger on when I was looking at it, but when you said you wanted to have that ancient manuscript feel. Right. I'm like, oh, bingo! That's what I was seeing, but I couldn't vocalize. It's definitely very dark fantasy, because our protagonists in this are essentially the Sisters of Silence and Meek, and the Sisters of Silence are scary as any bad guy that shows up in it. I mean,
I was going to tell you, they kind of remind me of the character from Chronicles of Riddick. That lady that kind of floats in the wind.
Floats like a mist.
Yeah. They kind of remind me of that a little bit. Was that an influence at all, or not really?
It wasn't, but I mean, I love that whole series. So it's funny. Maybe that's something that was subconsciously in there. I don't know. I'm a huge Riddick fan, so maybe. But they're really the way they were kind of created was basically, I was fascinated by, you could have basically saintly imagery from the medieval period, where you have all of these saints in the Catholic religion where they're being utterly tortured, but it's supposed to be a beautiful scene because they're reaching out, and you have the little angel coming down, handing them like their token of martyrdom, but I'm like, but they're holding their flayed skin at the same time. And that really freaked me out. I was like, wait a minute, this is supposed to be beautiful. So this is the divine and the horror mixed together. So I was like, what if I kind of like embodied that in these characters where they're saintly, but their powers are just actually deeply terrifying.
Yeah.
So
I
it's
think
kind of
it's
beyond our
I think
understanding.
it's-
Yeah, you captured that.
I think
Definitely.
it's the second issue when one of them opens their mouth to scream or something, and
Right.
and it comes across like, whoa, you know.
Right.
I mean, it was
Yeah,
this
that's
is
the idea.
unsettling. Yeah, so no, I really enjoyed it, and like I said, the art style captured me. It all feels very epic, but with dark fantasy, that's one of the things is that there's no knight in shining armor. There's no,
Exactly.
I mean, it's your good guys could be bad guys in some other stories because it's degrees of and impressed very well. So
Thank you. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
Go. No.
With each volume too, I wanted to keep each one different from the next two. So I'm not going to spoil anything if you continue reading, but each miniseries has a different protagonist and follows a different perspective of this great big war. Because if there's one artist that really influenced me too, when I was interning at Marvel, was Garth Ennis, because I read when I was there, Punisher Max was going on. It was like I was like actually waiting for each issue, and it was torture because there's certain scenes with that villain Barracuda. He's like one of my favorite villains in Punisher Max. Just waiting for that next issue was crazy. And what I loved about Garth is that any villain, any character could be kicked off like this. He had the balls to kill off his villains so he could create new ones. And I actually really love that because all I kept thinking was like, what is he going to do next for this next arc? Like, can he do it? And then, of course, I later on read Preacher, and I was like, oh, of course he could do it. he did Preacher. And Preacher is one of my all-time favorites.
Preacher is, I typically list Preacher as my second favorite series of all time, right behind 100 Bullets.
100 Bullets. Oh, that's a good one. That's
those are my one and two.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's a good one too. I have to admit.
And both of them have that, and part of it because again, the writers have the balls, but part of it because they're their own little universe. They can get away with anyone can die, whatever happens. You're not beholden to but Jeff Johns needs this character alive for 12 issues of The Flash or whatever,
Right. More like 100.
Yeah.
But you're right. No, you're right. It's that's the thing. Like, because they're in their little worlds, you feel like anything can go, anything can happen, and that's something I really wanted to carry on in my series too. And even in terms of like varying up certain settings, because I don't know, some of you know, but I won't spoil it. Where Volume 3 takes place is a complete 180. So, but thankfully,
I was surprised to see that.
Yeah, but hopefully the readers enjoyed it, to kind of keep it fresh. So, and I'm constantly thinking, all right, what can I do next, to really engage them and not make it repetitive.
Yeah.
I mean, as a fan, I'm a big fan of Marvel stuff. I grew up on it. I like my Captain America comics. I like my X-Men, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But also as a fan, I do love the purity of a creator-owned story,
right?
Where they're not being dictated to by what movie just came out,
yes,
or whatever. And as a creator, I'd love to take a swing at some of those things that I've grown up loving, but I love telling my stories. Johnny and I, we work together a lot on comics. I write, Johnny draws. And Ben and I have worked together a bit. When I latch on to something in a story, it can be a pain in the butt getting me to let go because I want to see that vision through. And I love seeing that as a fan when a creator is able to do that, to tell that you can tell the difference. You can tell the difference between someone who's feeling what they're creating and someone who's creating it because they're getting paid too.
Oh, absolutely. You could immediately tell. It's just, you can tell when someone's having fun and you can tell when they're not. It's just, it's all over the page and it's all over in the writing.
I will take a flawed masterpiece over technically perfect hack work.
I agree. Absolutely.
That's how I look at it. Now you with this you wrote it and drew it. That's something that I've never been able to experience because I literally, as I said I think last week on our show, I got an A for effort in art. I can't draw, so I can try, but I can't push a boulder uphill either. So how does you what's your creative process like when you're working on Blood Realm and you're doing both writing and drawing?
Sure. So I actually do things similar to the classic Marvel method, believe it or not. And for those of you, you guys know the Marvel method, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So that's usually how I work. So I have the idea in my head. I have notes. I don't like to work off scripts because I feel that scripts kind of restrict me. So it doesn't allow me, because I'm telling the story as well, to have little sudden changes happen that may be good for the story. So I actually have a rough outline of where everything's going to go. I know from beginning to end. I know what that last page looks like, and if there's certain dialogue that I'm really attached to, I write that dialogue down. Then I start drawing. I do my layouts and start designing each page, and then I tell it visually, and then I put the words in. But I know where the story is going to go. That just works for me. That may not work for other people. I know some friends who do both on their books, but they have to have everything strictly laid out. That's too restricting for me personally, but it could work otherwise for somebody else. But that's generally how I work. And then of course, once I have the letters in, I do color and all that stuff. Well, the red and the gray tones, because now you read the digital. They might be the older versions, because I actually went back, redid the red coloring, and I put gray tones like manga. So I don't know.
Okay, yeah, I think most of it's pretty stark black and white that I'm seeing.
Yeah. So that's how they originally came out back then.
Yeah, I was helping a friend. She's working on her first project, and she's planning to write and draw it. And I gave her some sample scripts, some of mine, some links to some online. But one thing I've always stressed is, like with scripting, there's no one way to do it. It's the way you communicate it to your artist, and like to her, if you're drawing it, your script doesn't have to look anything like mine, because if I got one of these guys drawing for me, I have to be clear to them what I'm wanting if I have a strong vision of it. But if in your case, if you're doing both, then you just need to make sure you're still in the ballpark,
right? And
because you got the rest of it, you know the pieces up there. So.
Right. But ironically, what's funny is that I tried the Marvel method with the artist who's doing Wirehead. And I was like, okay, because this is what works for me. And it just did not work. He needed to know exactly where things were going. And it was just too much changes. And I was like, you know what? All right, I'm going to sit down and write the script. So that's what we ended up. And it's working fantastic now. But it just goes to show you, different scenarios for different people, in different situations.
Yeah. How hard was it for you to make that change?
It was hard at first. Yeah. It was hard at first because, I'm so used to just going off the cuff, just going, all right, let's roll with it. And now, he needed things strictly laid out.
Panel by panel.
But then I was like, okay, but if you have any, because I hate it when people write scripts when I used to do freelance, make sure you do this, and things would be so detailed. I was like, now you're not letting me do my thing. You're not letting me do my visual storytelling, So I still want him to have room to breathe. So
Right,
it was kind of finding that balance because I was like, all right, what would I want? But then I know he wants detail too. So I got to give him direction, but I don't want to beat him over the head with, precisely exactly what it's got to be,
right.
But
I
we
think
found a
that's
good
what works.
balance.
Yeah, I think that's what works well with me and Tommy, because he lets me actually have the freedom to interpret what he wants out there and his
Right.
idea.
Yeah, you got to play. You got to
Yeah,
play.
definitely, and that's why we work well together. And unless it's something he wants specifically, then I'll try to interpret that the best of my ability. But Tommy's been excellent. Just let me have free reign. You just go and rock and roll. So
That's great.
Yeah, I absolutely love it when I'm working with somebody and they come and an artist sees something different than I do, and they come back and like I said, unless it's something that I have a very specific reason for why it's there, I'm yeah, no, let's do it. Come on, I love it. Let's change it. It's pretty great. And that's one of the things I like knowing who I'm. Like, I like going into the script knowing who my collaborator is going to be, because then I can kind of tailor what I'm giving them based off of what they need. Like I said, your guy on Wirehead, you knew he needed more details, so you knew, okay, well, I've got to give him this. Yeah, I like being able to do that. And like my problem is I've written so many scripts for Johnny that I'm working with somebody else. I write to those people now like I'm writing to him.
Right.
We've been working together for 10 years, longer than that now. So we just kind of have that synergy. But
that's great. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
You guys jailed by this time.
Yeah.
Rob, have you done any other genres besides just horror?
The children's books, but I mean those weren't really comics. But otherwise, really, just comic-wise, it's been mostly horror, fantasy, and horror. I originally wanted to do like a little new strip, kind of like Calvin and Hobbes.
Yes.
No, I love that stuff. I still love like Little Nancy, the Nancy comics, Little Nemo, and all that.
Yes.
I have an affinity for those classic
strips,
Sunday comic strips.
Yes, sir.
So I was originally going to do something like that, but like I said, as I was sketching out for fun, everything would start to look scary. And I was like, damn it. So eventually I just gave into the darkness, and now I feel things are working out.
Well, honestly, that's what Tom, because I liked horror comics, but I never really got into them fully, never really drew them until we did our last book, the More Than They Could Chew. And Tommy kind of brought me over into that, horror feel, and we just took off from there. I just going, wow, I realized I like this more than what I let on. So
you're scaring yourself. That's what happened. You scared yourself.
Johnny's not giving himself enough credit. He has sent me some truly demented sketches just out of the blue over the years, and I'm like, I want to run with that.
Oh my God. I had this in a dream. I see this thing at night. What do you think?
You need help.
I think you shrink and send more pictures.
Yeah.
So,
now Tommy's like, what have I done?
Yeah, my bad. Johnny was a good guy going into this partnership, so
You broke
my bad.
Johnny. Yeah.
Right.
I broke you.
Oh man, that's funny.
Well, it's just amazing that your creativity. When I just draw some nebulous looking thing, and then I got a story for that. I can use that. So
there you go.
I always thought that was amazing.
Going back to Blood Realm, I have another question.
Sure.
So knowing that Frank Miller is an influence, did he influence the one color feeling your comic book where you just use red?
Actually, there wasn't going to be any color originally in the book.
Really?
Yeah. I was going to make it straight up black and white, like an underground indie horror comic. And it was Peter who was like, you have the word blood in your title. He was like, I think we should get a little red in there. And I was really like, no, you're ruining it. Absolutely not. He was like, trust me, Just try it. And I was like, oh God, I did not envision it this way. It was actually really hard because when you see something visually, the whole world in black and white, and suddenly you have to put even just a little color, you're like, oh my God, it was hard.
Yeah, right.
But he was right because it worked. And suddenly when I started to place things, I was like, oh my God, it's making things pop now.
Yeah.
Pop even more than it did. And now the style has become synonymous with the series. Because now if it doesn't have red, people are like, what is this? It needs the red. So and also he knew, and Peter said, it's also, this is back when they were with Diamond, it's easier to get in comic shops and it's easier to sell when they can say it's a color book, even if there's one color. And sure, lo and behold, he said black and white sells harder.
I've never had a lot of dealings with Peter directly myself. Back when I was still on Twitter, I followed him. For people who don't know, who might be watching this, Peter, he's clearly a very sharp guy. What he's done at Alterna has, it's impressive to watch.
Mm-hmm.
And so, he's clearly a sharp guy. So, and not just, and knowing, the elements that go into, a good comic, and
right.
So
he's in my opinion, he's like the Vince McMahon of comics, man. He's just the hardest working guy in the
He really
business.
is, yeah.
The hardest working guy. And I do anything he says because I trust him completely business wise. So as he says, you should try this in promotion, I'll do it. I don't care. He told me get on YouTube a little bit. I've been doing it, because he has such an incredible just understanding of not only the industry but business and marketing as well.
Yeah.
And how to connect with fans. That's one of the reasons why out of the publishers who accepted Blood Realm, I wanted to go with Peter, because when I did a little research and I saw how his behavior was with reaching out to fans, interacting with them like closely, like friends, I was like, that's how I am. Like I love that. I want to be with this guy, And also he was like, there's going to be more to the story, right? Because other guys just wanted to just do the first three issues, and that was it. He was like, so is there like more? Because I want the whole saga. And I was like, there could be more. If you want it, I'll give it to you. So yeah, but definitely unbelievable. And the book wouldn't be nearly as successful as it is if it weren't for his guidance.
Gotcha.
Awesome.
Yeah,
wait, the Alterna Forum.
Yes.
Yeah. The Alterna Forum, you got to check it out. He just launched it. It's fantastic. It's on the main website. Have you joined, Ben? Did you join?
Yes. Yeah, I'm on there.
Yeah, I just got on there yesterday, and it's amazing. It's just he created just to get away from Twitter, and now with what's going on, it's a giant hub of all the Alterna readers and creators where all of us can interact. People can share their if they're looking for work, they can share their artwork, they can share their writing samples and stuff like that. Like, you got to check it out. It's really it's a genius idea.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
We've talked about your horror, your influence by horror, but so I'm a horror. Let's talk horror. What were some of your things growing up that worked you in the best possible way? I'm talking horror-wise. If you get to see it first, I'm not a shrink. This is the
don't incriminate him, Tommy.
So the ones that. So what was it? It was said. You said it worked me or disturbed me. I couldn't hear.
Warped you.
Warped me. Oh, okay. Oh, so I was close. In between the two. I would have to say, firstly, the classic Universal monsters. My grandmother had. Yeah, I see. Yeah, all of them. My grandmother had the VHS tapes. I would drive up to my grandparents' house in the Poconos with my parents, and they would put me in this classic, because it was a very classic style, house. I felt like I was in those movies because it was like a log cabin kind of thing, and I would watch The Mummy, Frankenstein, Wolfman, Invisible Man. I would sit there and it would just be on repeat. And as I play with my little action figures and my drawing pad, I would just have those movies on. Then occasionally we'd throw in Young Frankenstein. But
shake it up a little bit.
Yeah, you got to shake it up.
Yeah.
But those classic movie monsters, and then eventually when they ended up getting me, because then they saw how much I love this stuff. When I found out that Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, I lost it. I was like, wait a minute, it's a universe now, and they fight. That was my favorite. So, but I was always drawn to the Wolfman. There was just something about man becoming beast. You know, it really appealed to me, and I found werewolves, even to this day, deeply terrifying. I don't know what it is about them. Maybe because they're humanoid, you know, and you just I know they can overpower me, and they can probably shred me to pieces. There's just something about werewolves and wolfmen that freak me out. So that was really like the beginning, and then eventually that went to like, you know, it's not quite horror, but well, kind of. You know, you've got Godzilla, and then the big movie horror monsters. You know, which was the stop animation. Stop animation to me is like, I think, one of the greatest art forms ever. And CGI has its place, but when you look at, you know, what's the film with it came from beneath the sea, or 20,000 feet? I forgot. There was the one with the big octopus, and there was that one that's a dragon that goes to, I don't know if it goes to Coney Island or something. It's been a long time. I don't know. There's a look to it that makes it feel fantastical. You know, it's something, and I think maybe it has to do with because it's an actual puppet. Light is actually hitting it. You know, could be. So
no,
no, go for it.
I was gonna say I like subtle CGI.
Yes.
For like big effects. I want practical every time.
Yes.
I don't get scale models, rubber suits, all that stuff, because you're right. It has more of a weight to it. It you know, even if you can see the seams, as it were, it feels more real than something that feels pasted onto the screen.
Absolutely. No, I'd take that any day. So that was a big one for me. And believe it or not, I know Clash of the Titans isn't a horror movie, but the whole film is a fantasy film until you get to that Medusa scene. Suddenly, the whole movie changes for me. And I remember every time that scene would come on, I would stop. I would all of a sudden look up with my, I'd be drawing on the floor, and that's when I would be frozen, because it turns into a slasher movie, because she's knocking off all of these Greek soldiers until. I mean, it's not the last girl standing, but he has long hair. But Perseus is there, and he's got to defeat her, and he decapitates her, right? And first off, how does she kill him? First, she kills the one with an arrow, right, and then turns him to stone. The other guy knocks him into that pit of acid where his body's bubbling. I mean, like, it's terrifying,
right?
And then the way she comes out, the way the scene is lit. And then again, when he cuts off her head, and then he's holding the cap. Oh my God! Like, that's when I was like, you can merge horror and fantasy together. I was like, yes. And then later on, of course, Terminator, which I say Terminator 1 is to this day a slasher film, without a doubt. I mean, of course. He's like, of course, yeah. He's just knocking everyone off down the line. Literally, the Sarah Connors in a row. You know, he's going down the phone book.
Yeah.
You know, so, and that kind of, you know, that amalgam of sci-fi and horror was really, really, that kind of awoke something in me, because I love horror, I love fantasy, but when sci-fi is mixed in there, it's just a whole nother thing. Because Star Wars is sci-fi, but then when you put like horror elements, when we get to Alien, you know, now I'm like, whoa. Because I would also consider that a slasher film, you know.
Yes.
So,
No, it carries a lot of the same tropes, the same feel.
Yeah.
I mean, there's ultimately at the end of the day, there's nothing any more relatable, relatably human about the alien queen or whatever than there is Jason Voorhees.
Yes.
Because these guys aren't motivated by human design. They have a human shape, but
right.
And that's what Michael Myers is called. It's the shape.
The shape.
He's a human shape, and he's utterly inhuman.
Yeah.
Underneath that, there's no love. There's just a predatory need to kill, and it's basically the same thing in different trappings.
Yes, exactly. And so that was that stuff, and then of course the Halloween. I love Halloween and Halloween 2. I'm not a huge fan of the sequels, although Season of the Witch it was pretty neat from what I remember. That's the one with the masks, right?
Yeah.
After that, I kind of fell out of it.
Fair. Halloween's my all-time favorite slasher film. I own every Halloween movie that I feel is worth owning. I could do a whole show on Halloween, but you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
The Nightmare Before. No, I'm sorry, not Nightmare Before Christmas. Nightmare on Elm Street. That I've always leaned toward Freddy because he merged the fantastical. Because now this was a demon that was a slasher, and again that could invade my dreams, the place where you think you're safe, the most safe. That freaked me out. So if you want to talk about warping. That kept me up quite a few nights when I was young. The fact that this guy I could have the best day ever, but when I go to bed, he's gonna mess it up. That was terrifying. So, and again, those are pretty. They get worse and worse. But I have 1, even 2, but 3 is great, and then it gets a little, gets a little silly.
It's a little rough after that, yeah.
But then I really also, what formed me too was my cousins. They were the ones who were getting me into that stuff. See, my parents weren't exactly like, oh, let's watch Freddy. Let's, my older cousins were the ones who were like, come on in. All right, your parents are downstairs. We're going to throw on Black Christmas. And and that one really freaked me out because there was nothing fantastical about that. That was a dude. A regular dude that was killing off those girls, and I was waiting like, well, let me make me feel better. Maybe it's a creature. Nope, it was a guy, and that was crazy.
To that point, I have kids. I'm a terrible dad. My youngest son, he's seen all the Friday the 13th movies with me, most of the Halloweens. He takes this all in stride, right? Like he just. I was watching The Green Room with
oh my God,
Patrick Stewart playing the bad guy, the neo-Nazi. What
that movie's intense.
When my son flipped out when they released the attack dog. That's what got him. All this demons and slashers and stuff like that, completely unfazed. It was the attack dog that got him, and I think it was probably that. He knows that a dog could
actually do it.
Attack him outside, but Jason's probably not going to.
Right, because it takes it to the realm of the real. That's why I think when I was a kid, that freaked me out. That even Scream when I was young. I wasn't too young for Scream, but still, it's just that kind of vibe where it's people. So that's what I love about the slasher genre. It's like it can. There's always that whodunit element to it, and then you have the crazy monster slashers. But before that, even My Bloody Valentine, it's like almost like this twisted Scooby-Doo thing.
And slashers I think to me felt a whole lot safer until I got older and discovered true crime podcasts and novels and learned all these stories that weren't blasted all over the place when I was growing up, and I'm like, that happened to state over from me? That's terrible.
Scary, man.
The stuff's so crazy. You're like, I couldn't make a movie about this or a comic book about this because people would go, that's not realistic enough. And I'm like,
look this up.
Yeah.
So, and that's the kind of stuff that really led to, Wirehead. That's the project on Indiegogo. But the idea that, and I want to do something different with the Stalker because I didn't want to make him human because obviously we had a lot of those, and I didn't want to make him a monster. I wanted to make him a different kind of monster. So I really kind of harkened back to Terminator. And I don't know if you guys ever seen Death Machine by Stephen Norrington. It's the one with that killer giant robotic dog, and it came out like a little after Aliens, and it was imagine if you took Aliens and Terminator and mixed them together. Brad Dourif is in it; he plays the villain, and it's this giant metal dog-looking thing that just doesn't eat people, but just crunches them. And I thought that was so freaking terrifying because with that kind of villain, you can't gouge its eyes out, you can't bite it, you can't bang its head till it's like dizzy. And that thing is just going to keep chomping and chomping and chomping because it's a machine. And, even if it feels a bone break, oh, maybe I shouldn't break that hard. No, it's going to keep breaking because it's just told to break. So that kind of villain I wanted to do for Wirehead. So he is designed to serve, but because there is a malfunction in his processor, he actually does the opposite. But he's doing something that's terrifying, but he still says the words that he was programmed to say when he helps. So as he's squeezing your head, tighter and tighter, before your head pops, you hear, "Please remain calm." So that's
wow.
I like that.
That's what you get with Wirehead. So
Very cool.
yeah, so kind of just, I realized that ironically, just to circle it back to when you asked me what inspired me, it's funny that when I was trying to figure out on this little artistic journey of mine what I should be drawing to get published, you always go back to the things that got you into this stuff in the beginning.
Yeah.
And that I found so funny because you want to make the stuff that make you feel like a 14-year-old kid again. And that's how I feel when I make Blood Realm and Wirehead. And I realize that I'm just going back to that Clash of the Titans stuff. I'm going back to the Terminator and slasher stuff, because that's the stuff that I loved and got me, inspired to do this stuff.
Right.
Yeah, that's that's one thing I've said over the last several years is, I like to tell stories that people like me want to read.
Yeah.
And if that means that, I spend Monday through Friday in a warehouse and the weekends and the evenings putting out comic books that 20 people read, so be it. But that's going to be, it's going to be stuff that I feel good about having created because it's my, it's my artistic desire.
I would still be doing this if there was just 5 people reading Blood Realm because this is just something I need to do and I love it so much. And and I realized too, it took a while for me to realize this, is that there's an audience for everything. I used to think that, like I said before, I had to draw like Jim Lee. No, you don't. You don't have to draw like Jim Lee. In fact, you can draw the way you draw, and someone, even if it's 20 people, 100 people, 300 people, they're going to be like, oh, I like the way he draws that.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's the thing. It's just a matter of finding those people. And that's the only benefit, I would say, of social media. is finding those people somehow. It's easier to find them that way. So, yeah. It's good and bad, whatever.
I think we're all kind of aware that as comic creators in 2021, it's both easier and harder than ever to make that connection. It's easier because getting the books out there, all the tools are there to do it yourself.
Yeah.
But the problem is that the tools are there for everybody to do it themselves, and it's trying to push that past the other stuff to get people's attention.
Yep, that's what it is. It's because everyone's screaming for attention at the same time.
Right.
But it's if you find in the forums, I notice, or like some kind of whether it be a Facebook group or something, someone will, as you keep planting it, someone will be like, oh, that looks cool. Let me go check that out. They say sometimes, what do they say in marketing? It takes 3 or 4 times for someone to see something before they actually click it or they buy it.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's annoying, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
Ben, I've rambled. You want to get us back on track? this is what we do. I ramble a lot, and then Ben kind of lines us all back out.
It's all good stuff.
Yeah, I didn't think it was rambling. I thought it was good.
Yeah, I thought it was all good.
I like to talk.
Yeah, that's why you're here, Tommy. us artists are kind of shy.
Artists, we're quiet. We just be quiet and let the writers talk.
No, but
this is also the function we serve, like at conventions. Is Johnny and Ben and our other artists sit at the table and draw very pretty pictures that draw people in, and I chat them up. So.
Nice. Yeah, that's something I miss though. So that's why I enjoy doing these, because the whole convention vibe. I don't know when it's going to come back, to be honest. Not to get on a downer note, but like that's why it's important we do these things. So I'll say that with positivity. It's important that we do stuff like this, because I don't know when conventions are going to come back, but at least we can have a platform like this where we can get together and talk comics and everything like that.
Of course.
Yeah, that was actually originally what sparked this was I live quite a ways away from these. I mean, we're all in Oklahoma, the three of us, but I'm an hour or so away from them, and most of the time I only saw them when we were doing conventions. I mean, we talk a lot on Facebook or whatever, but I saw them when we did conventions, and obviously we haven't had a convention in a while.
Yeah.
So, and so, the idea came up, well, hey, we got webcams or phone cams or whatever, and let's make that time,
Yeah.
So
now is the time. That's the thing. I realize, like, all right, if I'm going to, we have this COVID thing going on, how am I going to use the time, and trying to be as creative as possible, making as much stuff as possible. I think you got to try, and it's hard, but you got to try and turn it into a positive in a weird way. It's tough though, but it's like, okay, let me rethink how I'm going to get out there. That's why I started the YouTube thing more hardcore, because I was like, you know what, I gotta do something else just in case these platforms are crazy.
Rob, I got to tell you, that's awfully positive for a guy who's so dark and demented.
It's my therapy. That's what it is. Right. Honestly,
I always like to tell people when I say or do something that surprises them, they find out I have an interest. I have layers.
Everyone,
I'm not. Yeah, I'm not one thing. I have layers.
Oh so. Yeah. No, it's. I think that's what's fascinating. When my readers meet me, it's hilarious because I think I'm like this big, like, metal death head kind of guy, with like tattoos and long hair. And when they meet me, they're like, "You're the guy who does Blood Realm?" I said, "Yeah." They're like, "Dude, I look nothing like I pictured." I was like, "Yeah, I just have a crazy dark side that I need to vent and release, and it just comes out on paper that way." Like, it's hilarious.
I've been happily married for 18 years, and my wife is Little Mary Sunshine. She doesn't like most of the stuff that I write because it goes to much darker places. But she loves me, and she fully accepts that that's part of me. It's just not part of me that she wants to read.
Right. That's hilarious. Yeah, I get it.
Well, going back to Blood Realm. So I've read all 9 issues. Loved it. Love the story. I think Oleg is my favorite character so far. That ending,
love Oleg.
That ending, though,
in volume 2.
Volume 2. I was not expecting that. But it takes us into the third one where there's a little bit of hope.
Right, and you have to balance it. I realize that it can't be dark all the time.
Right.
Because I equate it to what history is. History is just constant tragedy and darkness with little glimmers of light. That's what history is, because majority of it is bloodshed, but there's little glimmers of light occasionally. So I was like, I can't just have a book that's completely dark, because that's not really similar to how history is. So we have to have a little light, whether it be dim.
and just on a more practical note, as a storyteller, if it's always always dark, if there's never any hope,
right.
After a while, you're going to wear your readers down.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And I'm not saying this to trash anybody or anything out. I'm saying my experience as a reader when I was a massive fan of The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
When I was a day one purchaser, you know, like, oh, I'm told my comic book guy, you know, the store I was going to, hey, yeah, put that on my pull list. That looks good.
Right.
I used to every 6 issues, because Kirkman wrote in 6-issue stretches.
Yep.
I would reread the whole thing from the beginning after each arc ended. I was that big of a fan. And you know, the series has been over for a while now, so I don't feel too bad about spoiling anything for anybody. But
right.
You know, he does a big character purge at the conclusion of the prison storyline, and that was very jarring for me. And I considered dropping the book there, but I didn't. And I stayed. My last issue of the book that I purchased was issue 100. And what happened was he built the group back up again, and then started picking them off again. And I found that second go around, I didn't care anymore.
Yeah, right.
And it just taught me not to get invested. All he had taught me was not to get invested.
Right.
Not because anyone could die, but because everyone was going to die.
Yes.
And so
I agree.
It's not for me anymore. And you know, God love him, the guy has turned it into a massive success, and nothing but good feelings for him for that. It just wasn't for me.
Yeah. I actually stopped after the first prison. After that I was like, okay, because I think we hit that point now for, you know, in the story.
I will tell you, the only reason I didn't was that's the only time I've written a letter, or I think it was the first time I've written a letter. I think it's the only time I've written a letter to a comic book.
Oh, wow.
And he published it. Or no, I don't think he did publish it. And he's emailed me back and said, hey, will you give me a few more issues? And because he asked me to, I gave him about 50 more.
Oh, wow. So, damn. That's cool. Oh, that's really cool. That's great that he replied to you.
Sure. Yeah. I know. He goes, I understand, you know, it's a rough story we did. Just see where it's going and then decide. And I stuck it out. And I'm not saying I hated everything in the second 50. I'm just saying that as it stretched on, I was like, I'm a huge fan of the character Rick Grimes. And I would have been very content if he would have died in issue 100. That was the only thing I felt bad about, was I loved that character and not reading the rest of the, you know, it just wasn't for me after that point. So
right. Well, no, it's true, and that's the thing. That was a very long series too, so maybe it benefited if he kept it at a shorter length. You know, who knows?
Maybe so. Yeah. I give him all the credit in the world for how he ended it, though, with them soliciting like 2 or 3 issues ahead, and then just dropping final issue.
I love that.
That was actually pretty cool.
I love that too. You know, it wasn't a big spectacle, you know, like they did on the news with Death of Captain America, all this stuff. It's like, no, I'm treating this like a regular issue. It's over. Yeah. You know, this way, like whoever's still reading it is going to get it.
Yep. Now that I give them all the props in the world for that too. That was fantastic. So.
Yeah, that was great.
Hey, Rob, what do you have? I know it's still kind of early in the show, but what other ideas are you tangling? What's going on in the head of Rob?
Well, I'm going to have Blood Realm, again, 3 more volumes. I'm working on volume 4. I have the Wirehead series that may turn into a series. It's a standalone graphic novel, though, so I just want to specify that for people, because some people are like, oh, my God, is this going to be a long, ongoing thing? It's going to be a complete story. It's going to be 80 pages, and it's going to be a complete story. I think we need more of that stuff instead of like a lot of cliffhangers and all that. Like, give me a story. And this way I could see whether I like this or not. And if you make a sequel, like, all right, he closed that up really well, I'll dive into that one. So, but there is a possibility that I could bring it out into a longer thing. But that's just, you know, in the back burner. I do have another series I'd like to do, which is it's kind of like going back to my children's book stuff, but it's like more of a Tim Burton horror children's book comic. But it's
I get you.
yeah. So I'm fooling around with that. I'm a big fan also of Edward Gorey, the children's book illustrator, pen and ink. You know, he did a creepy alphabet book where it's like E is for electricity, and like in the illustrations, a different kid gets killed by one of the things.
Wow,
it's a famous children's book. It's hilarious. But yeah, you should definitely check that one out. Check that out. So. And like, it's kind of like it's great. It's great. Read it with the kids, Tommy. I'm telling you.
Yeah,
it's good. And what's hilarious, the illustrations are like cute and creepy at the same time. And like the kid will be falling down the stairs or something. Like it's wild. So, and also scary stories to tell in the dark. I used to love as a kid. So
sure.
It's going to have that vibe as well. But
nice.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, you know, and I know to some people it's going to sound like that's weird stuff, a weird tone to take with kids stuff. For me, growing up, like I feel bad for my kids now with stuff that's marketed towards kids.
Oh yeah,
because the stuff I watched, like had a little bit of had teeth to it. Even some of the kids stuff had a little more teeth to it than what you get now. And so, you know, I remember, I can't remember like specific titles now, but I'd latch on to at the school library or book fairs or whatever, anything that was maybe a kid's book that was horror themed, you know. I mean, it wasn't Stephen King stuff, but it was written for, you know, an 8 or 9 year old, but it was a horror themed that would probably not go over so well today.
Right.
And yeah, I fully support that. So.
You know what the problem is? I find that everything is too sanitized with children's book media today. And what I can't stand is that if you're not going to show kids scary moments, you know, how can they conquer fear if they don't experience it? You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
And I think that's a huge problem in children's books and children's media today. And that's why I think I'm shocked that, you know, well, I'm not shocked, but scary stories to tell in the dark, they were banned for so long. And, you know, I know they're not happy with the Edward Gorey book I just told you about, but when I read it as a kid, I never was like, I don't know, I was never disturbed and terrified. You know, I thought it was funny. You know, it's just all these other people come in and they don't understand the actual intent of that, because you're forming this kid's mind, but you're also forming that, yeah, fear exists. You're going to feel it, but here's how you can conquer it.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's a lot of their kids. They feel that their own kids are going to get influenced and become one of the slashers or whatever, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. But
really, they're just going to become comic book creators.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's even worse.
Right.
Yeah. That's hilarious. Nothing wrong with that, though.
No.
Oh man.
Yeah. That's it. Most of the stuff that I have written over the years has been horror themed, but most of it has also had the subtext to it that there is somebody who is that light in the dark, who's pushing back against the darkness. Right. Bad stuff will happen, but someone will stand up to it.
Right.
You know, I'm not saying I don't mind a story every now and then where the bad guy wins, but I do ultimately like to see at the end of it, yeah, the good guy wins. They might be missing an arm and they might be scarred for life, but you know, damn it, that's the sacrifice they're willing to make to be that light.
Yeah.
And I think to what you were saying, I think that teaches a very valuable lesson about standing up to fear, to monsters, to darkness, to So
Right. No, it's true. And we need more of that stuff. So that's why all kids should read Blood Realm and Wirehead.
There you go.
That's right.
Yeah. Oh, man. But this was great, guys. Really, I really appreciate this. This was awesome.
Well, thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, this was a really fun chat. How long does the show go? Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, we usually go 2 hours, but if you got to go.
Oh yeah, I actually have to run, unfortunately.
No, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, but oh no, this was great, guys. Are you guys on? Well, you said some of you aren't on Twitter, right, or anything? I know Ben is.
I'm on Twitter.
Instagram.
I'm on. I do Facebook and Instagram.
Okay.
Same here. I'm on Facebook and Instagram.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm on Instagram too. So Geronimo Draws is my thing. Yeah, follow me. I'll follow you back, and we'll stay linked up.
Yeah, definitely.
So if you're on my plan, I'll pull you up.
Wirehead's on Indiegogo.
Yeah, Wirehead on Indiegogo.
I dropped the link down there below, so check it out.
Oh, great! Thanks.
Support it.
Yeah, check it out.
And check out Blood Realm.
Yeah. You could purchase Blood Realm at alternaaccess.com. Peter's a great guy too. So
yeah, he is. He's awesome.
So yeah, guys.
Man.
Oh yeah, he's the man.
Yeah.
But it was a pleasure chatting with you guys, really, and stay in touch for sure.
Definitely.
And I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed both the book and getting to meet you today. So I'll at least be I'm saying it on the air right now. I'll at least be backing the digital edition of Wirehead. So.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah. I appreciate that, Tommy. Awesome. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much, and stay in touch.
Yeah, definitely will.
Yeah.
See you around.
See you next.
Bye. That was good.
Awesome, man.